Good morning, everyone. It is Wednesday, August 23rd, time for the AM edition of C2-A-Days from Campus to Canton. I'm Nicholas Ian Allen. We have a relatively light set of news and notes from around the country, so figured we'd take an opportunity to just give a quick recap of some of the things that we've discussed before, but to put together an injury report specifically for the teams that we are going to be watching this weekend in week 0. But before we get to that, a couple of notes. First at South Carolina, David Cloninger of the Post and Courier noted that Juice Wells and Nick Harbor are expected to play on next Saturday, week 1, against North Carolina, according to head coach Shane Beamer. Quote from Beamer says, "I expect them both to play. There will certainly be some guys that would be listed as questionable. All those guys tell me they're playing." So good news. We've mentioned Antoine Wells before, that he apparently has missed, I think, a couple of weeks of practice. All along, the reports have indicated, and Wells has gone to social media and said himself that he will be playing. Harbor had progressed, of course, will now forever be known as the number 1 freak on Bruce Feldman's 2023 Freaks list, the true freshman. Had climbed the depth chart, was getting reps with the number 1 receivers, but has been limited recently. So according to Beamer, both players, and it sounds like some others who've been nursing some minor injuries potentially as well, do expect to play. Now, he said plenty in C2-A-Days over the last several weeks. Just because a guy plays doesn't necessarily mean they're 100%. So if you're keeping this information in mind from a CFF, college fantasy football perspective, or DFS, I personally would be somewhat hesitant to expect Wells to play at his normal high level, all SEC, maybe even a little bit higher potential, as limited as he has been specifically. I would just sort of want to wait and see and see with my own eyes that he's 100% or close to it come week 1. Beamer also mentioned that it would be very disappointing if North Carolina's Des Walker, who we've mentioned before as being currently ineligible as a 2-time transfer from the NCAA, if he will be ineligible to play in week 1 against the Gamecocks, that would definitely be a bummer. Beamer says that, but of course the rest of the college football world agrees. So there, to my knowledge, has been no update. I think Andrea Adelson of ESPN had a piece on Walker, spoke with him about sort of the appeal process going on. So hopefully we'll hear something soon. But as of right now, Walker is not expected to play against the Gamecocks in week 1. At Purdue, a quick note from a piece by Tom Deinhardt of Golden Black, the On3 site, mentioned that, and I believe we've spoken on this topic a little bit, maybe just in passing, but Purdue is likely to be without their top 2 centers in week 1, at least in week 1, potentially even longer. Gus Hartwig expected to start, and then Josh Kaltenberger is the top backup. Both have been coming back from knee injuries, have been very much limited in fall camp, to the point where Colorado transfer Austin Johnson has been the number 1 center for the Boilermakers as they prepare for the 2023 season. So just an item of note. I know that we don't talk a lot of offensive line, but when you are without your top 2 guys at a pretty important position, I think it is worth noting. One quick depth chart observation. We skipped over Louisiana Tech's depth chart, I believe, last episode when we were doing some of the week 0 depth charts. Not anything too surprising if you've been following along with us. The running back situation, of course, has been in our notes previously. Jarvis Thornton is listed as the number 1 running back in the official, unofficial Louisiana Tech depth chart that was released with their game notes this week. Of course, the reason for that, and getting on the topic of our week 0 injury report, is that Marquise Crosby, the returning starter, is not listed. Tyrese Shelton, who has been named or listed as questionable by head coach Sonny Cumbie, is listed on the depth chart at the number 2 running back spot. But I believe that he is considered a game time decision. The wide receiver group, no surprise, Smoke Harris and Cyrus Allen are the starters at the H and the Z positions, respectively. The X position might be a little bit of a surprise to some. True Edwards has currently got the nod ahead of Kyle Maxwell in the starting lineup for the Bulldogs, according to the depth chart. The tight end position, Nate Jones has a lead over Ryan Rivera, the transfer from the FCS level, who I do expect will be a factor at times this year, but Jones currently listed as a starter in that depth chart. So moving on to a little bit more of the week 0 injury report setup. Wanted to basically just go down. I'll go chronologically according to the ESPN schedule and the times that these games are going to kick off, and just touch briefly a little reminder on some things for what we can expect. Navy and Notre Dame, of course, kick off the season at 2:30 Eastern, but in Dublin, Ireland. In our Navy injury reports, in our CFB Winning Edge team profiles, we do make note of all these injury updates best we can. Look for more, even some that don't get mentioned on C2-A-Days. We try to make note and make adjustments as necessary. The only player that it seems is going to miss the game for the midshipmen, according to injury, is Nathan Kent, a wide receiver who could have and may eventually emerge as a starter for the midshipmen. But elsewhere, seems that Navy at this point is relatively healthy. The quarterback situation we've discussed before, Ty Lavatai and Blake Horvath were listed as co-starters, but we have Lavatai projected to start, even though it was Horvath's name listed first on the depth chart. But it does sound like, according to the coaching staff, some quotes that we've discussed, that both players will play in week 0. At Notre Dame, there have been a few injuries throughout fall camp. A couple of tight ends of note, Kevin Bauman and Eli Raridan, are going to miss time with an ACL. Bauman retore his ACL, or tore a second ACL this fall. Raridan has been working back from an ACL injury that he suffered in late October last season. So that position is a little bit shallow as far as the depth goes behind Mitchell Evans, the projected starter. Holden Stays is number 2 on the Notre Dame depth chart. There is one defender, Aiden Gobera, who will be out for the 2023 season as well due to injury. UTEP at Jacksonville State, the Conference USA matchup, number 2 on our list. So far, it does appear that UTEP is relatively healthy. We do have some players highlighted in orange. That's our color code in our team profiles and our projected depth charts to indicate there's just an injury to be aware of. Might be an old injury, might be a new injury. We do add context in our injury report section in the bottom right-hand corner of each individual team sheet. But for the most part, UTEP is just the players who are noted, like Zuri Henry, the projected starting right tackle, is coming off of an injury from last year. So expect that unless something changes or we miss something, he will potentially be back. The same goes for linebacker Jerome Wilson Jr., cornerback Torrey Richardson, both of whom are projected starters for the Miners. So relatively healthy, it seems, at this point for UTEP. Jacksonville State, however, we noted earlier this week that the Gamecocks, in their unofficial depth chart, did not list top running back Anwar Lewis. So a player of significance, has been on just about every preseason All-Conference USA list that I have seen at the running back position, was expected to be the primary ball carrier, still maybe. But as of right now, it appears that Ron Wiggins and Malik Jackson are likely to share the workload, with Lewis seemingly unavailable for the week 0 matchup against UTEP. One next note for the game, UMass at New Mexico State. Both teams seem relatively healthy. We actually do not have any UMass injuries listed currently in our team profiles. New Mexico State, the only item of note was a previously listed injury from Marcus Buckley, backup defensive lineman. So both of those teams seem relatively healthy as well. And moving to Hawaii at Vanderbilt. Here's where there's a little more to discuss. For Hawaii, we've mentioned before that the running back group is relatively thin. Najee Bryant-Lele, expected to be the top backup to Tylan Hines, has suffered a knee injury that he's listed as questionable in our team profiles. Doubtful is probably a better term for that. He was not listed on the depth chart released by the Rainbow Warriors. Landon Sims, a converted tight end, was the number 2 running back to Tylan Hines in that depth chart. And then also there was a fun note that we saw yesterday, discussed it, or just sort of made the joke, tweeted it out, or made a joke, put it in our Discord yesterday during the C2C Winning Edge office hours, where we'll be taking questions from subscribers and contributors in our Discord channel based on our weekly projections. But Brian McInnes, who covers Hawaii, noted that 6th-year offensive lineman Solo Vapulu, who is the backup center but is the most experienced offensive lineman on the Hawaii roster, has started over 40 games in his career, has been practicing at running back, so which is a little bit of a surprise. Vaipalu, listed at 6'2", 270, apparently was spotted in the final preseason practice for the Rainbow Warriors before they head to Nashville in the number 0 jersey, lining up in the backfield. So something to note there. Hawaii and head coach Timmy Chang getting creative at the running back position, including potentially a 270-plus pound offensive lineman getting some snaps in the backfield. And Vapulu could potentially be running, once or twice against a somewhat limited Vanderbilt defense. There was a roundup of injuries from Araya Gerson of the Tennessean from a media viewing period with Clark Lee, where she noted several players who are expected to miss at least the week 0 game against Hawaii. That list includes tight end Cole Spence, who will be out for the season after suffering a torn ACL this summer. Backup offensive lineman Jake Ketchick is going to be out for the week 1 game as well. A couple of projected defensive line starters are potentially out, or I believe have actually been classified as out. Returning starter Christian James and Darren Agu, who is considered a potential starter, maybe even likely starter as an edge defender. Both players will miss the game against Hawaii week 0. The linebacker core was also hit with some injuries. Arrington Truesdale and Prince Colley both are expected to miss the game. Both are considered 2 deep contributors in our team profile depth chart projections. So just the front 7 specifically for Vanderbilt seem to be somewhat limited. And then there's a backup safety who is expected to miss the game as well, Stephen Sanianola. So Vanderbilt is a pretty heavy favorite against Hawaii, and understandably so. Blew out the Rainbow Warriors in week 0 last year. This game is at home, whereas that one was, of course, in Honolulu. But Vandy will potentially have some depth issues at a few key defensive spots. So just something to note as we look ahead to that game. At the 2 evening games, San Jose State at USC. I have not been able to find an update on San Jose State wide receiver Justin Lockhart. He, as we mentioned, there were reports over the weekend that he did not participate in the Spartans' final scrimmage, but has been in and out of the lineup with a upper body injury, was spotted with a cast early in fall camp. He is listed on the depth chart, as we've said before. Not 100% sure if he'll be 100% if he is able to play, but an item to note there for sure. USC has been relatively tight-lipped in a lot of ways, but it does seem that there are some defenders who could be limited in week 0. One, Solomon Tuipulotu is going to be out for the year with a leg injury. He is a senior in his final year of eligibility, but could potentially pursue, it sounds like, according to head coach Lincoln Riley, he is interested in seeking a medical waiver for another year. And then the linebacker group is potentially limited. Both Shane Lee and Eric Gentry, returning starters for the Trojans, have been limited in fall camp. As a result, Mason Cobb, the transfer from Oklahoma State, has been getting a lot of reps, and true freshman Tackett Curtis is also practicing a lot with the number 1 defense. So a potential there for the true freshman to see some significant playing time against San Jose State. At FIU, we have not seen a depth chart. There was an update to the Panthers game notes this morning, but scrolling through did not see a depth chart. So similar to USC, we don't have any official or unofficial listings so far. However, head coach Mike McIntyre did mention, and I believe we failed to pass it along yesterday, that Grayson James will get the start at quarterback for the Panthers in week 0 as they take on Louisiana Tech. Other than that, the main injuries, one that occurred in the spring, Lexington Joseph is down with a torn ACL, will be out this year. Shamari Lawrence and Keon Owens are expected to step up and play in Joseph's stead. One quick note, I believe it was in Athlon Sports that I was reading, Eric Rivers, transfer from Memphis, who's been playing quite a few positions so far in his career, including some on the defensive side of the ball, apparently is making a move for some significant playing time at receiver. FIU does return starters Chris Mitchell and Jalen Bracey, and Dean Patterson is the other top experienced returner, but it sounds like Rivers is potentially going to be in the mix to catch passes from Grayson James, who has officially won that competition. So that will wrap it up for this morning. We will, of course, be back this evening with as much as we can find for news and updates, reports from all the great hardworking folks who are following these college football teams day in and day out in fall camp as we prepare to kick off the 2023 college football season. So again, I am Nicholas Ian Allen for Campus to Canton. This has been C2-A-Days, the AM edition on Wednesday, and we will see you again this evening.